Well, hello. My name's Ray Liversidge. I'm an Australian poet, and I live in a regional coastal city called Warrnambool, which is in the southwest of Victoria. And as a writer, I've written 3 books of poetry, a verse novel, and a chapbook. And later this year, I'll have another book coming out, which is a book of short poems and flash fiction. And I've had over 100 pieces of writing published both here and overseas. And personally, as a poet, I like to challenge myself and like to aim for each of my books to be different from the previous one. So that's basically me. So yeah, over to you, Dominic.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dominic, a writer from Heidelberg in Germany. And I can't give a list as long as Ray, but I have published poems in German in anthologies, and I'm about to publish in another anthology soon. And this is the first time for me to be involved in a translation project with any language other than German. And I'm very happy to have been part of this.
All right. So what, you going to read my poem?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. All right.
So I'll go first, reading a poem written by Ray in my translation into German. And in German, the poem is called Vom Abbau einer Brücke. Stell sie dir so vor. Die Sydney Harbour Bridge, überlebensgroß auf 5 Meilen. Ein zusammengeballter, meilenhoher Muskel, mal sie dir aus, als eine massive Zeile aus Silber, Blei und Zink als Ader im metamorphen Felsen, ein aufgeschlossener Bogen oxidiertes Erz. Führe dir 1000 rußtragende Männer vor Augen. Führe dir einen Vorstand anzugtragender Männer vor Augen. Wie sie sich die Hand reichen, um einen Berg zu zerlegen. Wie der Handler reicht, um einen Berg zu zerlegen. In einer Zeit, die nicht aufgehen will. Im Kreislauf der Informte.
Okay, thank you. So I will read it in English, and the poem is called Deconstructing a Bridge, and it goes like this. Think big. Picture the Sydney Harbour Bridge spanning 5 miles, flexing a mile upward. Imagine it is a solid silver lead zinc line of load in metamorphic rock with an outcropping arch of oxidized ore. Visualize thousands of men in suit. Visualize a boardroom with men in suits. Dismantling a mountain by sharing hands. Dismantling a mountain by handling shares. In a time incommensurable with the cycle it took to form. And yeah, I found it interesting, Dominic, that you would choose that poem because it's from my verse novel called The Barrier Range, and there's a few lines in there where I play on words, and I just imagine it would have been a little bit difficult to try and capture the playfulness of the language and translating it into German. Because I mention, I compare miners to being covered in soot as they're working in the mines, to board members who are wearing suits. And then also another line where I contrast miners, the miners sharing tasks underground with investors dealing in shares. So, hopefully that comes across in the German language, and I trust your ability to
I did my best
to convey that. Yeah, but I can't judge because I don't understand German. So maybe if I just continue, and I'd just like to say that my previous book was translated into French. So I certainly know the difficulties of translation, and not that I did that myself, but my previous publisher was French, and we worked on the translation, and it can be awfully hard process. However, that's the reason why I was initially interested in this project. Not only to have my poems translated, but to also be involved in translating the poems of the Heidelberg poets into English. Look, having said that, I did find some aspects of the project a little bit challenging. But both poems on both sides were initially interlinear translations, which I understand that they were basically translated word to word. However, the Heidelberg poets received assistance from some professional translators, while the Australian poets, while we were able to collaborate with the poets, and certainly that collaboration enabled us to gain valuable insights of the poems. I just felt that if we would have benefited from having access to translators, to ensure the mood, the tone, and the feel of poems, and that was captured accurately. But look, overall, I thoroughly enjoyed the cultural experience of meeting the Heidelberg poets, and Dominic, especially being matched up with you and being able to work closely together on each other's poems. Personally, I like to think that we've developed a friendship that will continue beyond the duration of this project. That's enough from me, I think. So I'll just pass over to you, Dominic, and I'd like to know your thoughts about the project.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ray. Also for your words. I also certainly hope that this will continue in one way or other. And yeah, as you mentioned already, I think there was a sort of asymmetry involved in this project, in the sense that what I did as part of this project, I think, is more akin to classic translations. So I sort of passed over the interlinears and went, well, being more or less proficient in English, I went for your originals and tried to translate them myself directly from the original poems, which was such a pleasure, I have to say. And I'm like, personally as a writer, I am I still like to learn and to discover a lot. Like, I know what I set out to do in a way. Like, as a writer, I'm really interested in the entanglement between, let's say, people and lived environment and landscapes and history and place, which is also a shared sensibility, I think, with you, Ray. So I think there was a common point of departure, and yet our poems and the poems we contributed to this project address this question and in this field of possibilities in a different manner. And that is something I have learned a lot from personally, translating your poems, and that has enriched my own poetry a lot. And also, it was just a lot of fun playing around with the translations. And you have been so supportive in giving me materials, your notes, some background information on collections like the poems, you mentioned them earlier with your French publisher. So for a general understanding, there is some connection with the German occupation of France in the Second World War. So there's a lot of history coming in there, and I would have missed out on a few things and subtleties there, not just there, but in other cases as well. And you were always there to answer my questions and to point out things. And it has been quite an adventure for me, really. And I got a lot from it. And I'm sort of now I'm thinking about the interlinear translations as well. If we could have addressed that differently, I think I was a bit I was very much focused on the classic translation process, and we're there to learn, and that's definitely something we both of us have learned. And we'll be even more wiser in the future.
That's right. If you get another opportunity, yes. But no, thank you. Yes, it was interesting that we did discover that we had a fair bit of common ground with our poetry, even though Dominic, as you can tell, is a lot younger than me, so he's starting out on his journey, and I'm well into mine. But it's been a pleasure, working with a younger poet, as well as the other poets. Some of them were around about my vintage, but there was a great cross section of people, both Australian poets and German poets. It's been a trip. It's been fun. So maybe we read your poem. So
let's do that.
Yeah.
I think you can go first again.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And then I'll
finish
off
with
yours? The original.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. And the poem I chose of Dominic's is one in English called Narrow Access, Tintagel. The fingers scratch in the sun, granite tips, and in the weighty lean of the island towards the nearby mainland. Towards it there flutters a tattered sail, or shallow smoke trails clatter, veriscan and gusty. An unknown instrument emits a sound, almost human, that springs back from the waves. On the edge, rain and debris without end. The dead gather on the beach at noon. Someone waits briefly and reads among the discarded faces. Hears the heaving surf, not you, but wonders who you are.
Thank you very much. Here's the German version. Schmaler Zugang, Tintagel. Schürfen die Finger in der Sonne Granitkuppen und im schweren Neigen der Insel dem unfernen Festland entgegen da. Flattert zerschlissen ein Segel oder untiefe Rauchfahnen knattern varistisch und böig, ein unbekanntes Instrument stößt einen Laut aus, menschenähnlich, der weithin von den Wellen springt. Am Rand, Regen und Trümmer ohne Ende. Die Toten sammeln sich am Strand zur Mittagszeit. Jemand wartet, kurz und liest unter den abgelegten Gesichtern. Hört nicht dich, hört die rollende Brandung, aber fragt sich, wo du bist. Thank you.
Yeah, I think you know the rhythm of your own poems, but hopefully I captured it as well because
No, I really enjoyed
think
it.
with both of our poems, I think.
Yeah. Was it an instrument commits a sound? What you went for in the end? I really like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting for me seeing that I could attempt to translate my own poems into English, but that just in the end, I always end up with something that doesn't feel right, that doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
The other way around is fine, like translating something from English into German, but the other way around is so hard, and it's interesting to see what you came up with, and especially the options you chose that have a nice rhythm and sound natural. And I couldn't have come up with them. Not at all.
No. Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Yeah, as you said before, I tried my best as well. Yeah, so hopefully we did okay. Oh, yeah.
So,
that's about it, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like that to me.
So yeah, maybe we'll just say thank you very much, Cities of Literature, for the opportunity to participate in this project. And thoroughly enjoyed it, Dominic, and I think you have as well.
Yeah. A big thank you from my end as well. It has been really fun, and I also liked that the project gave us some time, so there was no need to rush, and I could thoroughly get to know Ray's poetry and the poetry of other Australian poets from Melbourne and the state of Victoria, which I know a lot more about now after the project than I did before. And thank you very much.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was, you touched on one important thing, that the whole process wasn't rushed. We were given plenty of time to get to know each other's as people, and then to be matched. Luckily, I got you, and just to be given time to work on the poems. I think that was very important. So, yeah, very much enjoyed the experience.